The silence was louder than any buzzer beater. For days, Caitlin Clark said nothing after officially making Team USA, and that quiet unsettled the entire WNBA. Fans expected celebration. Veterans expected humility. Critics expected restraint. Instead, they got nothing. And that nothing turned into pressure so intense it bent the narrative around her. Every show opened with the same question. Every timeline boiled with speculation. Why hadn't she spoken? And what was she waiting for? When Caitlin finally broke her silence, it didn't feel like a statement. It felt like a line drawn. Her words were calm, controlled, almost surgical, but the impact was explosive. Because beneath the gratitude and measured tone, there was something else pulsing: defiance. She didn't apologize for her spot. She didn't soften her success. She didn't flinch. And in a league already fractured by youth versus legacy, that composure hit like a match in dry grass. Angel Reese noticed immediately. So did Paige Buchers. So did the veterans who felt doors closing behind them. Caitlin's voice carried more than pride. It carried finality. It suggested decisions had been made long before the public announcement, long before camps, long before fairness debates. And suddenly, Team USA wasn't just a roster. It was a referendum. Social media erupted. Praise turned to panic. Support flipped to suspicion. Was this confidence or confirmation that the system had already chosen its face? Coaches watched carefully. Executives said nothing. And players across the league felt the ground shift beneath their feet. Because Caitlin Clark didn't just speak. She signaled that the future had arrived, and it wasn't asking for permission. And what followed next would expose just how much that truth terrified everyone else. Caitlin Clark didn't wake up one morning and become the most polarizing name in women's basketball. That tension was built brick by brick, shot by shot, headline by headline. From the moment she stepped into the national spotlight, the league began reshaping itself around her presence. And not everyone was ready for that kind of shift. Her range wasn't just deep, it was disruptive. It stretched defenses, ratings, expectations, and egos. And with every sold-out arena and broken record, the unspoken resentment grew louder. Veterans who had spent years grinding in near silence watched the attention flood in. Some admired her. Others smiled publicly, while privately wondering why their sacrifices never came with this kind of spotlight. Caitlin felt that duality early. Praise to her face, doubt behind her back. She learned quickly that success didn't just earn applause. It created enemies, especially in a league still fighting for respect and visibility. And she learned to armor herself with composure, knowing any emotional crack would be magnified. Paige Buchers understood that pressure differently. Once labeled the future herself, Paige's path was rerouted by injuries that invited both sympathy and suspicion. She became the league's what if, protected carefully, spoken about softly, and often shielded from the harshest criticism. Caitlin watched that too. Not with jealousy, but with awareness. She noticed which narratives were nurtured and which were challenged. Who was given patience? Who was told to prove it again and again? Angel Reese's story cut across both of theirs like a scar. Where Caitlin was framed as precision and Paige as promise, Angel was framed as disruption. Her confidence was policed. Her emotions scrutinized. Her competitiveness labeled excessive. Caitlin saw how differently the league treated unapologetic fire when it didn't fit a preferred image. And Angel noticed who was allowed to be fiery without consequence. As Caitlin's profile rose, the league's internal politics sharpened. Every USA basketball camp, every off-season conversation, every hypothetical roster debate carried her name. Some coaches pushed for her immediately. Others hesitated, not because of talent, but timing. Was she ready? Or was the league ready for her? Those questions weren't about basketball. They were about control. Caitlin felt it in small moments. The way interviews steered her toward humility. The way praise was often followed by reminders to respect the process. The way comparisons were drawn to legends before she'd even had time to breathe. She wasn't just playing anymore. She was representing a shift the league couldn't fully manage. Behind closed doors, Team USA discussions grew tense. Veterans believed spots were earned through years of loyalty and sacrifice. Younger stars believed impact mattered more than tenure. Executives watched international competition get younger, faster, more aggressive. The pressure to evolve clashed with the fear of alienating the past. And in that collision, Caitlin's name kept resurfacing. She never publicly demanded anything. That was the irony. She let her game speak, even as the noise grew unbearable. But silence has a cost. Every time she didn't respond, others filled in the gaps. Some claimed she was protected. Others said she was being used. Both narratives stripped her of agency. The moment she officially made Team USA wasn't the end of a journey. It was the ignition of one. Because her inclusion symbolized more than selection. It symbolized endorsement. Of youth. Of marketability. Of a future some welcomed and others resented deeply. Caitlin understood that when she chose not to speak immediately, she knew words would be weaponized. She knew gratitude could be twisted into arrogance, confidence into entitlement. So she waited. She watched reactions unfold. She saw veterans go quiet. She saw fans celebrate and critics sharpen their knives. She saw Angel and Paige pulled into the orbit of a decision none of them controlled. And in that silence, Caitlin made peace with a hard truth. No matter what she said, someone would feel erased by her presence. Someone would feel replaced. Someone would feel betrayed by the system that lifted her up. Her emotional history wasn't just about pressure. It was about restraint. About learning when to speak and when to let the storm reveal itself. Because when Caitlin Clark finally chose to break her silence, it wouldn't be to soothe the league. It would be to claim her place in it. And that choice was about to turn tension into open conflict, with consequences no one could walk back. Caitlin Clark broke her silence at the exact moment the league was already bleeding tension. The statement wasn't loud, but it landed like a controlled detonation. She thanked her teammates. She honored the process. She said she was ready for the responsibility. And then she said one sentence that changed everything. She acknowledged the pressure, but made it clear she wouldn't apologize for earning her place. That line split the WNBA clean in half. Veterans felt it instantly. Some heard confidence. Others heard confirmation that the league had already chosen its future and wasn't interested in pretending otherwise. Group chats lit up. Private calls were made. A few players who had once defended Caitlin went silent, realizing the optics had shifted. This wasn't just a rookie making Team USA. This was a symbol being installed, and everyone knew it. Angel Reese felt the tension before it ever went public. She saw how Caitlin's words were framed differently depending on who was speaking. When Caitlin showed composure, it was leadership. When Angel had done the same in the past, it was called attitude. That contrast burned. Paige Buchers felt it too, though in a quieter way. Her name was suddenly being used as a buffer in debates. Proof that the league could protect multiple young stars while still claiming balance. Paige didn't ask for that role, but it wrapped around her anyway. Inside Team USA prep conversations, things turned uncomfortable fast. Coaches began speaking in coded language. Phrases like fit, chemistry, and long-term vision replaced direct basketball talk. Caitlin's name was no longer discussed in terms of readiness, but inevitability. That word spread quietly, and when it reached veteran ears, it felt like a verdict. Some felt erased. Others felt cornered. The first public crack came when a respected former Team USA player went live and questioned the selection process without naming names. She talked about loyalty, about sacrifice, about how silence from leadership spoke louder than explanations. Fans connected the dots instantly. Caitlin's mentions flooded with debate, support clashing violently with resentment. The league tried to calm things with neutral statements, but neutrality only inflamed suspicion. Then came the locker room moment that no one was supposed to see. A closed practice clip leaked, grainy, uncontextualized, devastating. Caitlin drilled a deep three during a scrimmage and didn't celebrate. She didn't have to. The reaction around her said everything. A veteran clapped late. Another turned away. A third muttered something that cameras barely caught, but microphones did. The clip spread with captions arguing opposite truths. Either Caitlin was being iced out, or she was dominating a room that resented her. Paige watched that clip in silence. Angel watched it twice. Behind the scenes, USA basketball scrambled. The narrative was slipping. And that's when the first shocking twist surfaced, not as gossip, but as documentation. An internal selection evaluation leaked, time-stamped weeks before final camps concluded. It didn't list names, but it outlined priorities: global reach, generational transition, and accelerated integration of high-impact youth talent. The implication was unavoidable. Decisions weren't just about form. They were about timing and optics. The league denied pre-selection, but they didn't deny the document. That hesitation detonated everything. Veterans felt vindicated. Fans felt manipulated. Caitlin felt exposed. Her achievements were suddenly being reframed as strategy instead of merit, and no amount of shooting percentages could fight that perception. Angel saw the system laid bare. The same system that had labeled her too much while fast-tracking others as necessary. Paige felt the floor tilt beneath her, realizing protection came with strings she never asked to hold. Inside Team USA environments, trust evaporated. Conversations stopped mid-sentence when certain players entered rooms. Coaches over-explained simple drills, afraid every decision would be questioned. Caitlin noticed defenders going harder at her than anyone else. Not dirty, just intentional. Testing, measuring, sending messages that didn't need words. Media pressure escalated into something darker. Analysts debated whether Caitlin's silence before her statement was calculated. Others accused her of benefiting from a system that didn't apply evenly. She couldn't win. If she defended herself, she'd be called arrogant. If she stayed quiet, she'd be called complicit. Angel recognized that trap instantly. She'd lived in it for years. The first direct confrontation happened off camera, but the aftermath was loud. A veteran challenged a rotation choice in a Team USA meeting, questioning whether opportunities were being redistributed prematurely. Caitlin didn't respond. She didn't have to. The room already knew who the question was aimed at. Paige tried to redirect. Angel stayed still, absorbing every word, every look, every power shift. That night, another leak hit. This one came from an anonymous source close to USA basketball, claiming at least one veteran had threatened to withdraw availability unless transparency improved. That rumor lit a fire under sponsors and executives. Emergency calls followed. PR teams worked overnight. But the damage was done. The league was now fighting two wars, one against public outrage and one against itself. Caitlin sat alone after a game, phone face down, realizing that making Team USA hadn't brought relief. It had brought isolation. Paige iced her knee longer than necessary, mind racing through scenarios she never wanted to consider. Angel trained harder than ever, because she knew what was coming next. When systems feel exposed, they don't correct themselves. They deflect. And as pressure mounted, a final realization began to circulate quietly through the league. That if this chaos continued, someone would have to absorb the consequences. Someone visible. Someone symbolic. And whether Caitlin knew it yet or not, the fight was no longer about whether she deserved her spot. It was about who would be sacrificed to protect the decision that put her there. The fallout didn't slow down, it metastasized. What had started as tension inside Team USA turned into a full-blown power struggle across the entire WNBA ecosystem. Front offices whispered. Agents panicked. Veterans felt their leverage slipping while rookies realized opportunity came with a target painted on their backs. And at the center of it all stood Caitlin Clark, now carrying a spotlight so hot it scorched anyone standing too close. The league's response made everything worse. Kathy Engelbert released a carefully worded statement about evolution, balance, and growing the global game. It was meant to calm nerves. Instead, it confirmed fears. Fans read it as corporate approval of a youth takeover. Veterans heard a farewell speech disguised as optimism. Social media exploded into factions overnight. Hashtags defending Caitlin battled those accusing the league of favoritism and manipulation. Angel Reese felt the temperature spike immediately. Her mentions filled with comparisons she never asked for. Clips resurfaced of her emotional moments, re-edited and weaponized. The same outlets praising Caitlin's composure questioned Angel's professionalism. Angel snapped back, not directly, but unmistakably, posting a photo of her grinding alone in an empty gym with a caption that didn't name anyone but said everything. The message was clear. If the system was choosing favorites, she would force it to look at her. Paige Buchers found herself trapped in the middle. Every question she was asked felt like bait. Was she okay with Caitlin's selection? Did she feel pressure? Did she think the process was fair? Paige smiled, deflected, stayed diplomatic, but inside, frustration grew. She knew what it felt like to be crowned too early. She also knew what it felt like to be protected until people forgot how dangerous you could be. And now, she was being used as proof that the system could be kind, while still being ruthless. The escalation reached a new level when Team USA held its first closed-door exhibition. No fans, no media, just players, coaches, and tension thick enough to choke on. From the opening possession, the message was physical. Screens hit harder. Closeouts came faster. Caitlin absorbed contact that would have earned whistles in any other environment. None came. She got up every time, jaw tight, eyes cold. She wasn't being hazed. She was being tested to see if she'd crack, complain, or demand protection. She did none of it. That restraint unsettled people more than any outburst could have. Then came the second major twist, bigger, uglier, impossible to walk back. A respected WNBA insider dropped a late-night report claiming that USA Basketball had already committed marketing resources around Caitlyn's international debut months before final roster confirmations. Not hypotheticals, not projections, commitments, sponsorship decks, global broadcast tie-ins. Her name was embedded in plans that assumed her presence long before votes were supposedly cast. The league tried to dispute timelines. But screenshots don't lie. The narrative flipped instantly. This wasn't just about fairness anymore. It was about integrity. Fans who had defended Caitlyn now questioned the process, even if they still believed in her talent. Veterans felt confirmation of their worst suspicions. Angel saw the proof of what she'd always felt, that the system decided who was marketable before deciding who was worthy. Caitlyn saw something else entirely. She saw that her career was being negotiated in rooms she'd never entered. The psychological pressure became relentless. Every missed shot felt amplified. Every made shot was dismissed as inevitable. Teammates grew cautious around her, unsure whether support would be read as alliance. Coaches overcorrected, sometimes benching her longer than logic suggested, desperate to avoid accusations of favoritism. The irony was brutal. Caitlyn had become both centerpiece and liability at the same time. One practice ended with raised voices. Not screaming. Worse, controlled, clipped frustration. A veteran questioned why certain offensive sets were being installed so early. The room knew what that meant. Caitlyn finally spoke, not defensively, not emotionally, but firmly. She said she didn't ask for the system to bend. She said she just showed up to work. That should have ended it. It didn't, because the next morning, an anonymous player poll leaked, claiming locker room trust within Team USA was fractured. Names weren't listed, but implications were. The media framed it as a culture problem. Fans framed it as jealousy. Executives framed it as a crisis. Angel Reese responded by dominating her next game, staring down cameras with an intensity that dared anyone to reduce her to a footnote. Paige responded by dropping a quiet masterpiece, reminding everyone that she was still very much part of the future. Caitlyn responded by doing what she'd always done, shooting through pressure like it didn't exist, even as it carved into her from every direction. But behind the scenes, a darker conversation had begun. Sponsors were nervous. They wanted stars, not scandal. League officials wanted stability, not civil war. Someone floated the idea of temporary adjustments to protect the program. That phrase landed like a threat, because adjustments always need an example. A pause, a message, and Caitlyn could feel the air shifting. She noticed meetings she wasn't invited to, interviews that were suddenly optional, praise that became conditional. The league hadn't turned on her, but it was preparing options. Just in case. Angel noticed it too. Paige did as well. 3 different paths converging toward the same realization. When power systems get exposed, they don't collapse quietly. They look for a controlled explosion. And as Team USA prepared for its next public appearance, rumors spread that a roster clarification announcement was coming. One that could redefine roles, minutes, and visibility in ways no one was ready to accept. Caitlyn checked her phone that night and saw one message from an unknown number. It read, "Be ready. They're about to make an example." And in that moment, the question wasn't whether the chaos would explode. It was who would be left standing when it did. The announcement didn't come with names at first. That was the cruelty of it. Just a sterile league release about role clarification and competitive balance within Team USA. But everyone knew exactly what it meant. The internet translated it in seconds. Timelines detonated. Fans didn't wait for confirmation. They picked sides immediately, and the emotional wreckage spread faster than any official explanation ever could. Caitlyn Clark's name trended worldwide within minutes. Some fans defended her like she was under attack by an entire system. Others accused her of being the system's chosen beneficiary. Every clip of her smile was analyzed. Every interview answer was dissected. Even her silence was framed as strategy. She scrolled once, then locked her phone, chest tight, realizing the narrative no longer belonged to her. Angel Reese felt the backlash in a different way. Her supporters were loud, furious, exhausted. They pointed out the double standards with surgical precision. Why was intensity celebrated in one player and punished in another? Why did marketability keep surfacing in conversations that were supposed to be about merit? Angel reposted nothing, but her presence online grew heavier, more intentional. When she finally posted a single word, noted, it sent shockwaves through WNBA circles. Paige Buchers was pulled into the storm unwillingly. Media framed her as the safe alternative, the neutral ground between chaos and control. That narrative suffocated her. She'd fought too hard through injuries to be reduced to a comparison point. Her post-game interview, meant to be routine, turned emotional when a reporter asked whether the current situation made her grateful for protection. Paige paused. Too long. And in that silence, people heard everything. She answered carefully, but the damage was done. Clips went viral with captions twisting restraint into compliance. Inside the league, players felt exposed. Group chats fractured. Some veterans felt empowered to finally speak, liking posts that questioned leadership. Others pulled back, afraid of retaliation. Younger players watched closely, learning lessons they never wanted to learn this early. That excellence didn't insulate you from politics, and silence didn't guarantee safety. Kathy Engelbert's follow-up press conference poured gasoline on the fire. Her words were measured, but her refusal to address specifics felt intentional. She spoke about long-term growth and global responsibility. Fans heard corporate deflection. Players heard confirmation that decisions were already locked in. Trust didn't just erode, it collapsed. Caitlin felt the emotional toll hit her family hardest. Messages turned cruel. Conspiracy theories replaced analysis. She was blamed for decisions she didn't make, praised for strategies she never designed. At practice, teammates checked on her in private but stayed distant in public, afraid association would be interpreted as allegiance. Isolation settled in like a fog. Angel channeled the rage into her game, but even dominance couldn't shield her from narrative warfare. Commentators questioned whether her frustration was productive. The implication stung. She knew the rules of this game. Passion was only acceptable when it came packaged the right way, and she was done shrinking herself to fit it. Paige withdrew inwardly. Her circle tightened. She trusted fewer voices. The pressure to be perfect, polite, and palatable pressed down harder than any defender ever could. She started to wonder whether being loved by the system meant being owned by it. Fans took the conflict offline. Jerseys burned in protest videos. Season ticket holders threatened boycotts. Others pledged deeper loyalty, buying merch specifically to show defiance. The league had wanted attention. It got a reckoning instead. Then came the emotional gut punch. A former Team USA legend released a statement, not attacking Caitlin, not defending the league, but apologizing to younger players for a process that asks them to carry weight they never agreed to hold. That single sentence reframed everything. Caitlin read it twice, throat tight. Angel shared it without comment. Paige saved it. The fallout reached a point where silence was no longer neutral. Every player was being asked, directly or indirectly, where they stood. And with every answer, the divide deepened. The WNBA wasn't just facing backlash. It was facing an identity crisis, one that couldn't be patched with PR language or delayed decisions. As the noise peaked, whispers grew louder behind closed doors. Emergency meetings, sponsor pressure, international partners asking uncomfortable questions. The cost of the chaos was becoming measurable. And when systems start counting losses, they don't look for nuance. They look for a move. Late one night, a new rumor surfaced, this time from a source no one dismissed. It claimed the league was preparing a decisive statement, one that would reframe the situation and restore confidence. Those words chilled players more than any insult ever could, because reframing usually means rewriting, and restoring confidence usually means someone pays the price. As fans waited, phones buzzing, feeds refreshing, one truth settled heavily across the league. The fallout wasn't ending. It was about to be finalized. The decisive statement dropped without warning, buried inside what was supposed to be a routine update. No countdown, no build-up, just a cold, carefully structured release that hit players' phones before most of them even woke up. Team USA wasn't changing its roster, the league said. It was redefining roles and visibility to protect unity. The phrasing was surgical, and the implication was brutal. Caitlin Clark's role had been adjusted. Not removed, not demoted, adjusted. Fewer media obligations, fewer featured moments, a quieter integration into international play. On paper, it sounded reasonable. In reality, it was exile disguised as protection. The league wasn't punishing her for making Team USA. It was punishing her for what her presence had revealed. Caitlin read the release alone, heart pounding, realizing she'd been turned into a solution and a problem at the same time. She had done everything right, said the right things, stayed composed, delivered on the court. And still, the system had decided she needed to be dimmed so the noise could settle. Silence hadn't saved her. Excellence hadn't saved her. Nothing had. Angel Reese recognized the move instantly. She'd seen versions of it before, when intensity became distraction, when dominance became divisive. Her reaction wasn't public anger. It was colder. She understood now that the league didn't just manage players. It managed narratives. And anyone who disrupted the preferred story would be reshaped until they fit or faded. Paige Buchers felt something snap quietly inside her. Watching Caitlin absorb the consequences of exposure forced her to confront a truth she'd been avoiding. Protection wasn't kindness. It was control. And the price of staying comfortable was staying compliant. Paige wondered how long before her own role would be adjusted for the sake of balance. Fans erupted, but this time the outrage carried a sharper edge. The league's attempt at damage control read like confirmation of everything critics had accused it of. Caitlin wasn't being benched for performance. She was being managed for optics. Support poured in from unexpected places. Current players, former legends, even international stars who recognized the tactic immediately. The backlash wasn't just emotional. It was strategic. Then came the twist no one saw coming. Caitlin broke her silence again. Not with a press conference, not with an interview, but with a single, unfiltered post. No graphics, no sponsors, just words. She acknowledged the adjustment. She acknowledged the pressure. And then she said something that reframed everything. She said she accepted the role change, but not the reasoning behind it. She wrote that she didn't ask to be fast-tracked, marketed, or positioned. She wrote that she believed in competition, transparency, and accountability. And then she wrote one line that sent shockwaves through the league. She said she hoped future players wouldn't have to choose between opportunity and honesty. The league couldn't spin that. It wasn't an attack. It wasn't defiance. It was exposure. Calm. Precise. Devastating. Caitlin wasn't rejecting Team USA. She was rejecting the narrative that required her to disappear to keep the peace. And by doing so, she forced everyone else to confront where they stood. Angel reposted it within seconds. Paige liked it, then unliked it, then liked it again. Veterans who had stayed silent suddenly found their voices. Not all in support, some in defense of the system, but the fracture became undeniable. The league had tried to close the wound quietly. Instead, it bled in public. Behind closed doors, executives panicked. Sponsors asked questions they couldn't answer cleanly. International partners questioned whether unity could be manufactured without trust. The adjustment had backfired. Caitlin hadn't been muted. She'd been amplified. But the most dangerous consequence hadn't surfaced yet. Because late that night, another report began circulating. This one hinting that internal communications tied to the original Team USA selection process were under legal review. Not leaked. Requested. The kind of request that doesn't come from fans or media, but from parties with authority. Suddenly, the narrative wasn't just about fairness. It was about accountability. Caitlin saw the headline forming before it was written. Angel felt the shift in tone. Paige realized the ground beneath the league was no longer stable. The system that had tried to manage the fallout was now being forced to answer for its decisions. And as the league prepared its next move, one question hung heavier than all the rest. If the truth came out fully about pre-selection, marketing influence, and narrative control, who would be willing to stand in front of it? Because Caitlin Clark had already stepped into the storm. And the league was about to find out whether it could survive what she'd just set in motion. This isn't just about Caitlin Clark anymore. It never was. It's about what happens when a league built on resilience, sacrifice, and truth tries to outrun the consequences of its own decisions. What you've just witnessed isn't drama for clicks. It's a turning point, and every fan, every player, every voice watching from the outside now has a choice to make. Because silence doesn't stay neutral forever. If Caitlin can be adjusted for exposing the cracks, then Angel can be erased for refusing to shrink. Then Paige can be protected until protection becomes permission. Then the next generation can be shaped before they ever speak. This moment isn't asking you to pick a favorite player. It's asking you to recognize a pattern. The league thrives because fans care deeply, because emotions run hot, because these players mean something beyond box scores. And when that passion is redirected into blind loyalty, systems stay comfortable. But when it's redirected into accountability, change becomes unavoidable. So pay attention to what happens next. Watch who speaks. Watch who suddenly goes quiet. Watch which narratives get pushed and which questions stop being asked. Support the players who tell the truth without theatrics. Question statements that sound polished but say nothing. And don't let growth become an excuse to avoid transparency. If you're a fan, your voice matters more than you think. Engagement isn't just views and merch, it's pressure. It's refusing to accept half answers. It's demanding that excellence be rewarded without manipulation. And that opportunity doesn't come with conditions attached. And if you're still watching, still listening, still feeling that tension in your chest, that's the point. This story isn't finished. The league hasn't made its final move. And the consequences of what's been set in motion haven't landed yet. Because when systems are forced into the light, they don't change quietly. They change because people refuse to look away. So don't look away now. Stay locked in. Stay questioning. Stay loud. Because the next chapter won't ask for permission. And when it drops, everyone will remember who was paying attention when it mattered most.